Voice acting is one of those hard things to analyze and properly critique because when there's a bad performance, it could be any number of things. It could be because of cheap audio equipment, a lack of talent in the sound and editing department, poor direction, a terrible script, or, an actor's inability to properly emote. Voice acting is an art form, and I'm going to go through the cast list and give my thoughts on the vocal performances in RWBY. RWBY on the whole got pretty lucky. Most of the Rooster Teeth personalities are people that talk for a living, and so small parts tend to go to these personalities with the direction that they should just play themselves. And some of them still give bad takes that makes it in the final cut.
Blondie, you're here. Why?
I'm going to save the main four for last and start with Team Juniper. Miles is a better actor than he is a writer. It can get pretty cringe, but even at its worst, there was a method to the madness. Maybe it's because he writes his own dialogue, but Jean is consistently one of the few characters that can elicit a good emotional beat with a god-awful line.
Of being the lovable idiot stuck in the tree while his friends fight for their lives. Don't you understand?
Jen Brown always seemed flat and wooden. It's like she always held her voice back. I have to believe this was on purpose since the same directors and writers also handled her in Red vs. Blue, where she sounded a lot more natural and confident. Jen Brown's performance is the main reason I believe Pyrrha was always intended to be somewhat on the spectrum. Samantha Ireland is a treat and full of energy. Unfortunately, she gets a lot of bad lines. Her remedy for delivering bad dialogue is to go over the top, and with her high register, over the top means in a tone that can shatter glass.
They're birds! Cracked it!
Rin has had two voice actors. Monty Oum never really got a chance to deliver anything other than flat monotone. Neith Oum has been given so much more to work with. Because of that, he has all of Rin's best lines and his absolute worst. He's clearly not a pro, but neither was Monty. I'll talk the change-up as a lateral move, but I would like to see a world where Monty got to deliver some of the lines from Volume 4.
You're not going to find anything. We just have to press on.
But speaking of Neith, nepotism is a major problem in the casting. Jessica Negri only got the part of Cinder because she was friends with Monty. I don't understand why they haven't recast her yet. She's one of the worst in the series. The only good line deliveries she's had were her grunts in Volume 4. Kim Newman as Emerald isn't much better. She has never tried to be subtle. Even in a scene where she's supposed to keep her voice down, she speaks with the same volume as all her other scenes. But they both fare better than Raven Broadwin. She's voiced by Anna Hollum, who is married to one of the Rooster Teeth founders, and she always sounds like she's speaking through her teeth. At least Jessica Negri has the excuse of being in every single volume and maintains her role for consistency's sake. They really should have picked someone up to the task when Raven came back into the story in volumes 4 and 5. It wouldn't be the first recasting, and it wouldn't be the last. Speaking of those recasts, I actually prefer JJ Castillo as Mercury. Yuri Lowenthal is an absolute champion. He's amazing in Camp Camp, and he's the best Peter Parker in any medium. But for Mercury, he just uses the same voice he used for Sasuke, which, as a big Naruto fan, that can be very distracting. When RWBY started, it was just Monty and all his friends. Some of them have moved on to pretty lucrative voice acting careers. Michael Jones is probably the poster boy for this. Even with piss poor writing, Sun has managed to stay true to his name, as he and Callie were the only rays of sunshine for Blake's storyline in volumes 4 and 5.
That chameleon friend of yours got me pretty good, but I'd do it all again if it meant protecting you.
As RWBY garnered popularity and became RT's flagship franchise, they've been able to acquire higher profile actors. You can make the argument that the groundwork was made in the first volume. Shannon McCormick isn't exactly a nobody, and he was always very good as Ozpin. And on the other side of the spectrum, RT used their connections with the Halo franchise to score Jen Taylor as Salem. But aside from a single episode in Volume 6, neither of them have been given anything especially weighty. The practice of getting big-name voice actors for supporting characters picked up pace in Volume 3 with Yuri Lowenthal and, more importantly, Vic Mignogna as Crow. As much of a talented actor as he may be, I always felt damn near anyone could play him. I don't see him being missed.
Look, if this thing goes south, it's not something we can just fight our way out of.
Other heavy hitters include Josh Grell as Tyrion Kalos. Grell has played some of my favorite characters in recent memory, but Tyrion is obnoxious. He goes full Jared Leto, and sometimes he can be genuinely menacing, but most of the time he's just annoying. Chris Sabat is better utilized as the guy you knew was going to be played by Chris Sabat before you even knew Chris Sabat was in this. He, does that a lot. Tends to happen when you have such a distinct voice, a resume longer than the Nile, and accept payment in beer and barbecue.
If this falls to pieces over your grudge with a child, I will not be taking the blame.
The other professionals do well in their parts. Some of them, like Aaron Dismuke, do everything they can to make their character work. Others, like Mela Lee as Cordovan, just make it worse. So let's move on to the big four. Barbara Dunkelman is a Rooster Teeth personality and one of the main girls of the company, handling a lot of their community management despite an inability to communicate properly with fans who have grievances. She started off as one of the worst actors in the series, but slowly became more competent. She's still not great and is a slave to the script, but she's at least passable.
Yeah, I'm scared. But I'm still standing here.
Erin Zeck as Blake is the opposite. She started out as one of the few competent actors in the show. Then she moved to LA to try for a real acting career that hasn't really worked out as much. Ever since then, she's phoned in her lines and it shows. Phoning in lines is a bad practice even for the best of voice actors. It's always better when you're able to record at the studio, preferably with your co-stars, in order to get some of that natural chemistry. Erin's lines sound like they were done in one take, and she has no chemistry with any of the cast members anymore. And I can surmise it's because of her location, because when she is in the studio or at RTX, she does have legitimately good chemistry with Michael Lindsay and especially Barb.
Okay, well, I remember getting to know Ruby and thinking, this girl is the embodiment of purity.
Kara Eberly is the secret weapon of the cast. She was a receptionist before this role, yet some way, somehow, she managed to be one of the most consistently good actors in the show. She's really given it her all and has maintained a level of professionalism that many of her more seasoned co-stars lack. She's an absolute treasure and perfect in the role.
Worrying about your hair, your money, your stupid problems that don't mean anything.
Equally perfect, but nowhere near as consistent, is Lindsay Jones as Ruby. She's a godsend when she nails the line,
Leave her alone!
but there is an issue. Her Ruby voice is such a departure from her normal talking voice that I can't imagine a world where she's able to maintain it. Over time, her voice went from perfect to her character, to being a close approximation of her character, to being an impression of the impression. Volume 6 had her really pulling back on the reins and trying to find something a little more natural again, and it's all for the better. Rooster Teeth has really lucked out with some incredible talent. With how good Kara, Michael, and Lindsay ended up being, you can almost forgive them for taking the chance on people like Jessica and Anna. It's been one of the saving graces of the series. Most of the actors are at the very least talented enough to make this ham-fisted dialogue feel natural, which translates to this sort of faux organic sense to the audience. When dialogue is well delivered, it's a lot harder to notice just how bad that dialogue actually is, and the inverse of it is true. You can have a perfectly functioning line handed to a bad actor, and it becomes a terrible line. And RWBY has had plenty of both. I'm Mediocrity4. Next Honest Look will be about editing, so until then, thanks for watching.